Hi everyone, welcome to biology practical session, and this is experiment 6, texture of soil. So texture of soil, once we say texture, so we will feel it with our fingers. Once we touch the soil and we will hold it between our fingers, we feel its texture, and by saying the texture we can say this is a sand, this is a clay soil, this is having some silt. So depending on the texture what we feel once we rub between the fingers, so we can just say this is a sandy soil, this is a clay soil. So why this texture is important? Before going to that, let me say what is soil texture. So soil texture is the relative proportions of different type of soil particles present in it. So the soil particles are of three types based on their size. So once we take sand, sand is the one which is large in its size compared to other two. So here the sand size varies between 2 millimeters to 0.05 millimeter. So the soil particle which is of size ranging between 2 millimeter to 0.05 millimeter will be called as sand. Then coming next, silt. So the size of this silt varies between 0.05 millimeter to 0.02 millimeter. The soil particles between this range will be considered as silt. Next, coming to clay. Clay is finest and it is small in size, where it will be measuring less than 0.02 millimeter. So the soil particles of size less than 0.02 millimeters will be considered as clay. So this is how we categorize the soil particles depending on their size. So now I think it's clear that what is soil texture means. Soil texture is decided by the percentage of sand, silt, clay present in it. Now why the soil texture is important? Why we have to determine the soil texture? It's very important because various factors that influence the plant growth will be based on the soil texture. Now say for example density, then water holding capacity of the soil, temperature, aeration, capillary, non-capillary pore spaces, and finally root penetration. Now once I take the soil is too clay and it is not having so much spaces in between its particles, so root penetration will become difficult. So it is to be equal proportion, almost equal proportion of sand, silt and clay in a soil will allow the better growth of the plants. And as we say, once there is almost equal proportions of sand, silt and clay, that type of soil is called as the loam soil. The loam soil is very good soil for the growth of plants. Yes, now here we are with the samples, soil sample whose texture will be measured now. So this is a roadside sample and this is garden soil. So we have placed it in dry as well as in moist condition just to show the difference once we touch it by our fingers. Now once we feel it and rub it with our fingers, we will feel the texture of this which is large. So that means it has more percentage of sand. And once we say here the garden soil, it is little bit fine as we keep rubbing it. So it means it has some less percentage of sand. So here once we touch it with a wet condition, the roadside soil will not adhere to our fingers. It is not sticky. But once I touch a garden soil, it becomes sticky. So it shows it has some more percentage of clay soil in it. So now what I have shown you is the basic methods what we use to find out the texture of soil, and this is quite comparatively more accurate compared to those, and it is almost measurable. So here we are using a sieve method. In sieve method, this is a sieve chamber. The sieve chamber is having a series of mesh of varying size. So from up if I start, this is a mesh of size 2 millimeter pore size, and we know that the size of this sand if present in the soil, it ranges between 2 millimeter to 0.05 millimeter. So the particles which is more than 2 millimeters will just get settled here, and less than 2 millimeter size will just go down. And here the next mesh is of size 0.05 millimeter. And we know that the size of silt particles if present in soil, it varies between 0.05 to 0.02. And those which are less than 0.02 will just come down into the third one, which is now the mesh size is 0.02 millimeters, and this is will be filtering the clay. The clay particles will be of size 0.02 millimeters that get settled in this mesh. Now, let us consider two soil samples. One is roadside soil sample, the other one is garden soil. So, first to start with roadside soil. So, we take around 500 grams of soil and put it over the sieve chamber. As the soil is filtered out at each mesh, we get the soil fractions collected at the upper one, which is a sand, then silt and the clay fractions. Now, once we collect the soil fractions in each mesh, we have to weigh it separately. Now, totally we have taken weight of the soil sample. It is 500 grams. So, out of 500 grams, for example, in the sand mesh, we have collected around 100 grams of soil fraction. So, weight of the sand fraction is weight of the sand fraction collected is 300 grams. Then silt. Weight of the soil fraction collected in the silt mesh, say 100 grams. Weight of the soil fraction collected in the clay mesh, say 100 grams. The sum of all the three soil fractions should be equal to the total weight of the soil which we have taken initially, that is 500 grams. Now, let us take weight of sand fraction, calculate the percentage of it, that is 300 grams. Now, sand fraction contain 300 grams out of 500 grams. So, the percentage of sand present in the given sample is 60%. Then coming to weight of the silt fraction, which is equal to 100 grams. So, the percentage of silt in the given soil sample will be 20%. Then, weight of the clay fraction, that is equal to 100 grams out of 500 grams. So, the percentage of clay present in the given soil sample will be 20%. So, now we have got the percentage of sand, silt and clay in the given soil sample. That is done by measuring the weight in each soil fractions. So, once we compare these percentages with the texture triangle, we can determine the texture class of the soil. So, before going to that, let us assume another sample, say garden soil sample, which we have taken the same proportion 500 grams, but the percentage of sand, silt and clay may vary in that soil. So for example, we'll just assume. So now we'll take up with the second sample, that is garden soil. The same procedure will be followed even for the soil sample 2. So we are taking 500 grams of soil and allowing it to pass through the series of mesh, and after that we will just measure the quantity of soil collected in each mesh. So total soil sample weight is 500 grams. In that, weight of the sand fraction. Here weight of the sand fraction, say for example, it is about 150 grams. Weight of the silt fraction, say around it is 200 grams. For example, weight of the clay fraction, say for example, it is about 150 grams. So the sum of all the three fractions should be equal to the total weight of the soil sample which we have taken initially, that is equal to 500 grams. Now once we calculate the percentage of sand, that is 150 divided by 500 into 100. That will be equal to 30%. So the sand percentage in the given soil is 30. Then coming to silt. So silt, it is 200 grams here. Once we calculate the percentage, it will be around 40% of silt. Next coming to clay percentage, where the weight of clay fraction is 150 grams. So the percentage of clay present in it will be equal to 30%. So in garden soil, as we have measured, so it is 30% sand, 40% silt and 30% clay. Now by studying the percentages with reference to the texture triangle, we can determine the texture class of both roadside soil as well as the garden soil. Okay, now let us study about the texture triangle. So using the texture triangle, we can determine the texture of the soil and we can say what type of soil it is. So how to read the texture triangle? Now once you see the base horizontal line, it has values ranging from 10 to 100. So 10 to 100, this is the percentage of sand. So the base of the triangle which will show the percentage of sand. Then the line which is towards the right side will be representing the percentage of clay, and the line towards the left will be representing the percentage of silt. And the same values range from here, it is 10 to 100. Percentage of clay we will go from down to up. That is base of the triangle to the apex of the triangle. In case of percent of silt, we will come down. That means from the apex of the triangle to the base of the triangle. So I repeat, while we are numbering the percentage of clay, we have to go from base to the apex. Numbering the percent of silt, we have to come down, that is from apex to the base. So here there are values for percentages 10 to 100. Now we have determined the percentage of sand, silt and clay in the roadside soil. First we will take this example. How to read the texture triangle? It is like this. Now from this data we know that percentage of sand is 60%. So sand is the baseline, horizontal base. Once you are taking or reading the percent of sand, you have to go up towards the right. That means 60%. Here Here is the 60% and the line corresponding to this is ear. So I will mark it with, so I am going at 60% on the percent of sand up towards the right side. Next, percent of silt, 20%. So if I notice here is the percent of silt and here 20%. Once we are reading the percent of silt, we have to come down. So from 20% of silt, going to come down and touch the baseline. So here we can notice that this line and this line are meeting at a point. Then coming to clay percentage, which is 20%. Now always remember, once we are reading the percent of clay, we have to draw the line horizontal. So here is the 20% of clay. I am going to draw the line horizontal. So if you notice here, all the three lines meet at a common point. Now we are going to cover the area around this intersecting point. So here if you notice, if I cover, this is a point where all the three lines are intersecting. So we have to cover the area completely around this point of intersection. That is, I am going to take this, here and here. So this area completely represents sandy loam soil. So the type of soil which we determined for the sample 1, that is roadside soil, it is a sandy loam soil. So next let us take up with garden soil. Garden soil is having sand 30%. So as I told, once we are reading the percent of sand, we have to go up towards the right. So 30% is here, 30%. I am going to go up towards right and touch the other line. Then coming to percent of silt is 40%. So while we are reading percent of silt, we have to come down and touch the baseline. So here is a point of intersection. Then coming to the percent of clay, which is 30%. So while we are reading the percent of clay, we have to draw horizontal line, that is 30%. So here is a point of intersection where all the three lines are meeting. The point of intersection where all the three lines are meeting. Once I cover the area around the point of intersection, say from here, so I am drawing with pink colored chalk. So the area which is covered completely around the point of intersection, so this area is together called clay loam soil. We are not considering loam soil because loam soil is lower gradient compared to clay loam. We are including the upper one. We have to consider the upper grade because we are covering the area till clay loam soil. So the upper one one should be considered. So once we cover the area around the point of intersection, it shows the uppermost one, that is clay loam soil. So the texture class or the type of soil what we have determined for sample 2 that is taken from the garden is clay loam soil. So this experiment is actually a demonstration experiment and this is not there for the exam. So just to study it and hence it is not done practically in lab, and but the method is taught to you, and I hope that you all have understood how the texture of the soil is determined by the sieve method. It's just based on the soil fractions what we collect in each mesh, and we are converting it to percentage. And very important thing is that we have to read the texture triangle. So I hope everyone have understood how to read the texture triangle, and you can practice by yourself by taking your own examples of different proportions of sand, silt and clay, and you can use the texture triangle to determine the texture class. So you can do it for yourself for practice.